Yeah. So how do we define success in our real estate business? For me, I believe you go into business to create, like I like lifestyle businesses. So essentially it's like, what do you want your life to look like? Create a business that allows the person who's creating it to really enjoy their life, to maximize their skill sets, to maximize life enjoyment, and still provide an amazing product for your clients.
Welcome to the LandLife Podcast with your host, PJ Riley.
Hey guys, welcome to the LandLife Podcast. My name is PJ Riley. Guys, if you're getting good information from this podcast, if you're learning a ton, do me a favor, like, subscribe, leave a comment. If you do want to know about the dirt game, I've said it once or twice before, landlifecourse.com. We'll get you all started there. Guys, today we have two guests, not one, but two guests. So I'm going to have to keep looking all over the place at these cameras. We got Tim Winfrey and Matt Cavanaugh. How you guys doing?
Great. How are you, brother?
Great,
Awesome.
man. How are you?
Great. So let's start out. Where are you guys at in the country? What part of the country are you guys in?
Yeah. So I'm in California. First of all, I want to say thank you for having us on.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be on your show. I'm in Central California, about an hour and a half south of Sacramento.
Okay. Hour and a half south of Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
Tim?
I am in the Chicagoland metro area. I'm in the west suburbs.
Okay. You guys run a podcast together. How did you connect if you guys were on different sides of the country?
Yeah. So we're in a group together called the GSD Mastermind. So Joshua Smith was our mentor early on in the game, still is our mentor. And so we met through that group. At the time, I started putting on some phone sales trainings for real estate agents who wanted listings, and Tim engaged in that. So I coached him on some of the sales sides, and then it just blossomed into this crazy friendship. And we both have a passion for content. And so as a result, he helped me invest in Chicago, buying some properties, which really increased my passive income. And essentially from that, we just said, hey, like, why are we not doing some level of content together?
Yeah. Are you guys doing deals together, or is it a podcast only? Other than the Chicago deals?
All the above.
All of the above. Okay. Great deal. So you guys are investors. Let's go back a little bit. Let's get us to the point where we're at right now. We'll start with Matt. Matt, what got you to the point where we're at currently right now, where you're an investor in real estate?
So I actually started investing in real estate before I became an agent, had some limiting beliefs, and now I went back to it. So, basically my mother-in-law got me into it. So she was not a real estate investor, but she wanted to invest. So she was getting ready to go to one of those seminars where they get you to put your credit card in, raise the limit, go through all that stuff. So I wanted to learn, and I also wanted to prevent maybe possibly her from losing all of her money and all that kind of stuff. So she went to this tax default auction conference, essentially, where we learned that if people don't pay their taxes, they lose their property. And if you get to them either at the auction or before, you might be able to buy the deals at a pretty good rate. So we didn't charge up a credit card to buy the content information. We just got the concept and studied it pretty in depth, and it was pretty incredible. So we actually, in California, mind you, bought a house for $30-something thousand, and then a duplex for $21,000. This was back 2000, maybe like 10 years ago, 8 to 10 years ago, and killed it. It was amazing. And then I left my job at that time. And then it was like this limiting belief settled upon me, which was, hey, now that you are in the game, you have to really know what you're doing. And so I just became an agent for 5 or 6 years before I built up the confidence to become an investor again, even though we were successful as investors from day one. So that was a little about my journey.
Yeah. $21,000 duplex. That's amazing. I don't think you can get that now.
It's way harder. People started figuring this stuff out. We were running direct mail, door knocking to people. Usually we would have like 6 months efforts to get to them. They would call us the day before. So you'd call you at 9 in-the-morning, and you had from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. to figure the whole transaction out, all the paperwork, take all the risk, understand everything, pay the taxes, and close the deal. So
Before it hits auction, right?
Yeah, because if at 5 o'clock that day, it's over, it goes to the auction the next day. And so you're trying to do the best you can. So we would hire essentially these title research people that didn't work for the title companies, that would more or less, they couldn't guarantee anything, but they're like, we think you're going to be okay. But because we're buying a duplex for 21,000, we sure as heck just hoped. So there was a lot of risk too, but yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we would do that in once it was Alabama or one of those southern states as well. And I remember sending a guy out there, and we would send the same guy out to all these different houses to look at them prior to us bidding on these things. So one, man, I looked at it and it was it was beautiful. Had a nice picket fence, a white picket fence, that the front was just immaculate. And so I said, hey, go check this house out. And he's like, all right. He goes, do you want me to go in the house? And I was like, if you can get in the house, go in the house, look in the house. He goes, okay. So he walks up. It's this beautiful home. It looks great. He looks in the window. He's like, it looks kind of weird. He goes through the back door. There's nobody in this house. It's probably been vacant for 5 years. Goes in the back door. He looks up and there's no roof.
Jeez.
There's absolutely no ceiling, roof. He's looking up to the sky.
Yeah.
Whatever ripped that thing off is no longer there. But so you really want to do a lot of due diligence on these things. Like you guys obviously are doing. Don't go, just going by the county pictures and expecting these houses to look exactly like they're going to look there. You're going to really want to do some significant due diligence on there. So Tim, same question. Where you at? What got us to this point?
All right, awesome. So I am second generation, so in terms of the retail game, I was raised by a single father for probably the first 10, 12 years of my life, something like that. So I spent a lot of time going on showings with him and stuff like that. So I've been ingrained with the business since I was very, very young. My dad started flipping very lightly when I was like in middle ages, say 7th, 8th grade. So like I was doing demo and stuff like that, very, very young.
Wow.
And my dad is a very meticulous person. Like everything needs to be stacked army style. If I don't sweep a room 10 times, he's going to find something. So, so basically, like he ingrained like how to run a project for me. That really grew. I got my license, I believe, in 2011. But when I was doing that, I was mostly still working on his projects because he kept putting me there. He kept teaching me new things. So, I mean, I could do pretty much anything myself except for plumbing now. And that is a choice because that shit is nasty. I do not like doing plumbing. I don't even like demoing the plumbing. I don't want to put it back together either. So that's kind of how it started. In the meantime, in the interim, when the market collapsed in 2008, I was still in high school. And my dad was an agent. He was a very high producer at the time. And like all high producers at the time, he had a lot of money coming in and then he had almost nothing coming in. And, a large portion of the realtors that survived that downturn survived with BPOs, which are broker price opinions. If the audience is not familiar, that is similar to an appraisal. It is just you get paid much less because you're not a licensed appraiser. But the best part about it is oftentimes it's just a drive-by. So you drive by, you take 4 pictures, they pay you $40. You could do this in volume. So yeah, I mean, I was doing BPOs on the same side as that as I was growing my project management experience with him. So, I mean, eventually we came to a point where we've done over 75 properties or so together. I've done thousands of BPOs. I saw a random ad for an REO broker. He's like, I'm looking for somebody that knows how to project repairs and somebody with BPO experience. And I was like, well, that's me, right? So
I'm your guy.
So I emailed this guy. He called me 5 minutes later. He's like, I can't think of somebody that could possibly fit this role better than you. And he got me right into the office. So I'm working with this really, really high volume REO broker. I think he was 4th in Illinois in size for a couple of years, purely based off of his REO business. And I was involved in every single one of those transactions moving forward from like 2015 to 2017. So I manage all the repairs for all the REOs. If you're familiar, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, they tend to repair these properties. So, I mean, it's a lot of work because we had hundreds of REOs at a time. So I was managing all of those. I was doing all the property valuations. Eventually, the REO market started to tank. I think this was around 2016. It just wasn't there anymore. So my boss had to find a new role for me. And the role that we chose based on my skill set was to be the VP of acquisitions for the new real estate investment arm of the firm. So that first year that we did it, I believe we did 25 units. We made about 500 grand. The unfortunate part for me is I only made 10% of that money, and I was doing, the vast majority of the efforts. So from there, I decided to move along. I actually moved back to working with my dad on a retail team for a little bit. And eventually I just decided to break off 100% free. And that was around 2018. And I've been growing the retail and investment operations kind of simultaneously. The investment feeds the retail, essentially, is the way I like to do it. So that's kind of the quick and dirty of it.
Yeah. You guys both worked with family members to get these businesses started. That's pretty cool. That's something you never really hear very often, I guess.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. I like that. All right, guys, let's talk about your business then. In-state, out-of-state? Are we buying locally? Are we buying across the country? Where are you guys buying your properties?
Yeah. So for me, I live in California. I own our primary in California, and then I own one other investment property. I just divested of everything else that we owned personally and in the partnerships, and moved the assets out of state. So we own in Chicago, Ohio, Oklahoma, et cetera. So.
Okay. And Tim?
I'm mostly local at the moment. All of the flips that we've done have been in the Chicagoland area. We do cover the whole Chicago metro area. We've done stuff as high north as the Wisconsin border, as far southeast as the Indiana border. So, I mean, we cover the whole Chicago market, but we haven't really branched out yet. But that is certainly within the plans.
So this is perfect then. We got one out of state and one in state. That's great. Okay, let's start out of state. I mean, it's not easy. I invested out of state as well. What kind of team are you having to put together to be able to run a real estate investing company that doesn't even operate in your state? You can't even look at the properties, right?
Yeah. So how short or deep of an answer do you want me to go into? Because
give us the Cliff Notes version with a little bit of flavor.
So I got comfortable with the idea of out of state in doing retail first. And so essentially what happened is when I started running sales trainings, then I had some people that went to those sales trainings that said, hey, can you just build a team around me as opposed to me calling for myself, which I thought was crazy. So I told them no. And then they ended up calling for somebody else anyway. So I was like, fine. All right, I'll build a team around you. And so we did. And it was the best decision that I ever made. These people were committed, talented. They're still my business partner and business partners. And that's one of the connections that even Tim and I share, in that similar vein. So essentially, like, I got comfortable helping people sell their houses virtually without stepping foot in that state. And so as a result, it just made me very comfortable, because I just got used to that process. And so investing, it was like, it just seemed very, very normal to me because I had gotten used to the process of building teams that are remote. And I felt it would be a little bit ironic, maybe disingenuous, all kinds of words, if I was telling people I'm comfortable selling your property at top value, but I didn't feel comfortable investing. Yeah. So it just became a natural byproduct. Plus, let's face it, I'm selling these houses. I'm getting access to all kinds of properties potentially to purchase. The reason I even bought in the suburbs of Chicago was because Tim had asked me to convert a couple of leads into listings. And when I called the guy, he says, I don't want to list my properties. I want to sell cash. And I said, you understand that, because he had a portfolio of houses, not just a single one. You're gonna sacrifice hundreds of thousands of dollars selling off market compared to going on market. Like, you want to go on market? He goes, no, I don't. And I'm like, you're willing to give up hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity to sell in a cash process? He said, yeah. He says, the money's not for me anyways. The people I'm going to give it to are going to blow it. Will you please just take this off my hands? And I'm like, yes, sir. So I called Tim up. Hey, Tim, are you okay if I do this? Because I'm supposed to convert these for you for listings. And he's like, yeah, you just give me some commission and we'll make it work. So Tim made some nice commissions. We bought the properties, and that launched essentially Tim and I's relationship as it came to investing together. And he's been a tremendous resource. He's helped me to stabilize these properties, and that, amongst some other things, has propelled just the desire to invest where the money's at as opposed to where I live.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that are looking at doing out-of-state real estate are going to say, I want to know, like the roof issue,
Yep.
I want someone at least to go out there, maybe do a FaceTime video with me. How are you contacting people on the ground in all these areas to work with you?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing, if you're thinking about it that way, you probably want to change your reference point. So number one is, I had Tim. Tim is an epic badass, hence why we're working together, doing the podcast together. Tim had done 5,000 BPOs in that area every year for years. Like the understanding the pricing, understanding he had managed flips. Now, I'm not saying you need a person of Tim's caliber, because good luck finding one in any other area. However, like, if you could find even half of a Tim, like, I don't have to find the contractors, generally speaking. In fact, I did one time because I wanted to help a guy out, and it backfired like crazy, and I will never do that again. Tim is my guy. So I think you could look at it one of two ways. You can go find 10 people, and I'll tell you who the 10 are, or you could find a Tim. And so your 10 are typically, your real estate agent, your real estate attorney, your real estate CPA, your bookkeeper, your contractor, your handyman, your lender. Like there's about 10 people that you need in a market, so to speak. And Tim just solved all my problems because since I found Tim, he found the other 9 for me.
Okay. So so Tim's in Chicago, but what about, you said Oklahoma, Ohio, these other places too. So in those places, you don't have Tim. You're having to go get other people. Yeah.
And let me tell you some stories gone wrong too, right? Because I don't want people to feel like this is just, always a walk in the park. To me, if the return and the opportunity is big enough, I'm willing to put in the time and the risk. And so for me, when I evaluate markets, you have markets like New York and California, which are appreciating states. So you get these high volatilities, high increases. Then you got more Midwest states, which are really great for cash flow, and they fluctuate like this. So as the market increases and I want to place my money in safer bets, like in the Midwest as an example, and that's such a big difference for me as far as returns that I'm willing to take on some risk. So I had a guy, I'm not going to mention him by name, but I bought a property in Ohio. And I thought this agent was going to be awesome. He seemed like a super cool guy. I'm sure he's a cool guy. He told me he'd manage the property for me. We bought the property. He didn't have on the major systems when the inspection happened. So when they said the systems were working, they didn't know the systems were off. So we close on the property. And then instead of figuring it out after that, we wait 5 weeks to get the property rented and find out that water heater doesn't work. There's all kinds of issues. So we end up getting this property fixed, but he apparently didn't want to deal with any of those issues as a property manager. So he says, hey, I don't do property management. You're on your own. So I have this newly purchased property with all these issues and nobody to help, in a pretty rural freaking area. So it's not like, Sacramento where you've got 100 options in every different direction. It's like, there's like 3 people in the town that might be able to do that. And they're booked till Christmas. So I've had some horror stories and some things but to me, they still have been worth it because of the fact that the prize is so big for when you get it right. So like in Oklahoma, I'm an agent in Oklahoma. And so as a result, like I understand the contracts, I understand the process, I have access to the MLSs, but I still like to outsource the work. And so one thing that I have done is lean on areas where I have pre-established relationships. So I would say, figure out a way to pre-establish a relationship, test that relationship, and then go full steam ahead. And it's going to make the process a lot easier, but just understand, like, you're going to have you're going to take some licks. Just so if the upside's worth it to you, then the licks are worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So Tim, opposite, you're investing locally. It's all locally. I think we know the good things for a new investor, for someone that would be brand new to everything. I can drive over and see the house that I'm buying, what are some of the downsides though of being a local investor where you could go see that property?
Well, I will just start with that as being one of the downsides, because when you're talking to a lot of sellers, all of a sudden you're inspecting a lot of properties, and that takes a lot of time because not every one of them is even worth going out to necessarily. So to answer your question, we were very intentional on what we call the discovery call, which is the first call. And that is really defining what the seller wants, what their motivation is, where they're going, why they need it, and then trying to put them into a bucket and discussing solutions before we even go out to the property. It's like, we want to make sure that we are in the same ballpark before going out there, because that becomes one of the biggest wastes of my time ever. Because we cover such a large area. If I'm driving 30 minutes out, that's an hour. That's for one property, right? So, I mean, if I'm doing lots of these, all of a sudden, most of my time is traveling, which is great because I can do a lot of self-development, but it's not great because I'm not working. So that's one of the biggest downsides.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the first one that comes to mind. I can't really think of any other major downsides because I know Chicago like the back of my hand. Like, I've been to literally every neighborhood because of these BPOs. I've been to the worst sides. I've been to the best sides. I know I've been everywhere.
Okay.
So like comping and underwriting a property, like if you just want like a as is value, that'll take me 5 minutes. If you want me to fully underwrite the property, roughly 10 tops.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really know what other downsides there are. I have a pretty thick network of contractors where I have an A, B, and a C team. So like, if I need to go to the C team, I will, but I prefer to give my A team everything because they're the cheapest and most reliable. But I mean, Okay, here's a downside. This one just popped in. Taxes, man. I live in Illinois.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, taxes are a huge downside here, and that's actually one of the larger reasons why I haven't bought a lot of homes, because the taxes here are much higher than
Specifically property taxes.
Yes, specifically property taxes. I think we have the highest property tax rate in the country. I might be wrong about that, but I'm seeing other states where the property taxes are like $400 a year. Like their average house here is 5,000. Like that's the almost the bottom. There are some with like 3,500, but they're usually like condos or something like that. So taxes are obviously something that we need to be aware of. And I live in Chicago, man. The weather sucks sometimes. I don't know.
All right. So I hear a lot about Chicago specifically, and cities like Chicago, Detroit, all these cities that get kind of a bad rap. Is that a downside, going into more dangerous type areas versus coming to, like, I don't know, I live in Denver. We don't really have that many bad areas out here, right? Chicago's a lot different. Would that be considered like something you would watch out for if you're an investor out there?
Oh, well, I mean, it's something you have to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing about, like, I was just to Detroit recently. Detroit gets a bad reputation, but the downtown of Detroit is actually a pretty beautiful area, and it's not as bad as the reputation precedes it, right? There are actually lots of really nice homes in Detroit, lots of really huge brick mansions just all over the place. It's like the type of things we don't see in Chicago. You have to learn how to avoid certain areas, and that's very important with Chicago, because I would say almost the majority of Chicago is safe. It's the certain pockets you need to avoid in order to keep your safety. But even when you're in dangerous areas during regular daylight hours, generally speaking, you're still relatively safe. Like I said, I've been to the worst parts of the city. In terms of identifying a property to invest in those areas, that is going to depend on the person. I know lots of people that do it. Oftentimes they need to have a full-time security person watching the house, because smash and grabs are a regular thing. There's a normal thing with squatters in Chicago now, where they move into a property that was recently rehabbed and they write up a fake lease, and that becomes a big problem for the rehabber and stuff like that. So these are things you need to be aware of and work on preventing, and also, just like I said, the smash and grabs. If you put a new AC anywhere in a rougher area, you better Gorilla Gate that thing, or else it's going to be gone. And you better make sure that property is secure. There are alarms, and the alarms are not enough. These people are sophisticated. They know how to get around alarms. Like I said, I know people that hire security that are either on call or they're literally there.
Wow.
24 hours a day. Me personally, I choose to avoid those areas, because there is no shortage of nice areas in Chicago. Pretty much anything on the north side is awesome. Northwest side, pretty much awesome. Once you get to the south side, you could be very selective. There are still very nice neighborhoods on the south side. Obama's house is on the south side, right? So, I mean, it's not a total war zone, but there are lots of parts of the south side you might want to selectively avoid. And the same could be said about the west side. So, I mean, you need to be aware of the demographics and the crime of your areas, and whether or not your risk tolerance supports that. And it's really that simple.
Yeah, I can't. We went into the Chicago once for a big event, and we pulled up to the event, and we parked our car, and we got in, and they said, "How'd you get here?" And I'm like, we got a rental car and we drove it. We put it in the parking lot. This is in the south side of Chicago, and they said go out and get in your car, go back to your hotel, call a cab or an Uber, and have them bring you back out here. It's like, you never want to park your car here. You're not going to see it again. So that was in the south side of Chicago. That was around 2000. God, that'd have been a while. 2005, something like that. But you kind of look around, you're like, yeah, it looks a little rough, but but like any city has their issues, right?
Well, you could kind of I mean, obviously, I would lean towards actual data 9 times out of 10, unless I already know the area, which I already know lots of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can tell what type of area it is when you're in it. I mean, you just have to look at the quality of the properties. If you're in a really bad neighborhood in Chicago, you're going to see a shit ton of boarded up homes. Like there's going to be almost like one house that's boarded up, 2 that aren't, then 1 that is, and like half the street is boarded up almost. It's like that's a pretty clear indication that that's a declining area. So, I mean, there's a lot of these things that are pretty easy to spot.
Yeah, you guys seem to be doing pretty good. How would you describe, or how would you define success with what you guys are doing?
Oh yeah, good question. So if you can clarify and kind of guide us as to who you'd like to answer that question. So basically, we both have several different things that we're doing. So are you speaking directly to what Tim and I are doing together with the podcast? Are you
We'll
talking
go to
about
that in a second, but currently right now, your business, Matt, then Tim, we'll keep going that.
Okay, cool.
Rotation.
Yeah. So how do we define success in our real estate business? For me, I believe you go into business to create, like I like lifestyle businesses. So essentially it's like, what do you want your life to look like? Create a business that allows the person who's creating it to really enjoy their life, to maximize their skill sets, to maximize life enjoyment, and still provide an amazing product for your client. And so for me, I like being at home. You know, I like traveling too, but I don't like driving to showings. I don't like those types of things.
Yeah.
And so I built a business where I could be anywhere in the world at any time. So being virtual, entirely virtual as a real estate business wasn't super common amongst a lot of my peers, but it was important to me. So I went through the mental hurdles and the processes to build a team where we could sell 100 to 300 homes a year, and I wouldn't have to leave my house if I didn't want to, or I could do it from Hawaii or wherever. So, so for me, success based on that definition was, does the business support my life that I want to live? And can I have truly the life? So for me, it was, can I be wherever, however, whenever? And so that was my definition of success.
All right. Yeah. Build a lifestyle by design, basically. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. All right, Matt. All right, Tim, what do you got?
I mean, it's pretty much the same answer, to be completely accurate. I mean, I'm definitely looking to eliminate myself from the business, right? I want to work on my business. I don't want to work in my business. I mean, that is really my sole focus right now. I would consider success being me being the head guy, me having a CEO. That's the only person I need to talk to, and they get everything done. But that's something that is in process. We are building that as we go. But yeah, I mean, the lifestyle business, I want to be able to go anywhere I want to go, whenever I want to go, and do whatever I want, whenever I want to do it. You know, I mean, so that is definitely what my definition of success is: total financial freedom and purpose.
Yeah, I think that's what a lot of people, when they get into any business, they make the mistake of working in the business versus on the business, right? They get in there, they're doing the day-to-day task. Everything is done correctly. At least they think it's done correctly. You know, they're advertising, they're calling all the sellers, they're doing all these different things. But the downside is they're never really going to grow. You're never really going to build a business in itself unless you're working on the business versus in the day-to-day interaction. I think a lot of people kind of miss that. You know, the idea is nobody can do the job as good as me, you know, and I'm the only one that knows how to do it exactly like this. Well, guess what? That's fine. Even if they're doing it 75% as good as you can work on something else. You know, you can move on and do another part of the business as opposed to just doing it every single day. And it's hard. It's not easy for the new person to get into that, especially something like real estate, you know, especially out of state real estate. You know, you're dealing with, you know, a property. Let's say you're brand new day one and you're living in Sacramento and you want to invest in Oklahoma. You know, you've never been out there. You don't know what the properties look like. It's going to be tough to get out of there, to get out of the business, but you have to do it if you ever want to grow. So other than that, I mean, what are people doing in your real estate business or in the real estate investing world? What are people doing today incorrectly? Like, what are they all doing wrong?
Good question. So I'd like to kind of talk about the way that you phrase it at the end. And I've caught myself doing this thousands and thousands of times over the years. And I've just now become, in the last few years, aware of what I'm doing. So like you had mentioned that it's super, super hard. And I think that it's true in the sense that most people, it's a challenge to be overcome. But I think number one, above anything, is mindset. And so while I always skirted mindset conversations because I was the type of person that believed it's practical action, not mindset, that drives the business, you start to realize that your mindset really shapes things. So for example, your entire worldview shapes the perspectives that you have, and your perspective shapes things that are as fundamental as what's possible. So like, as you hire mindset coaches, there starts to become a clarity on how valuable mindset really is. And so, for example, I try to be very careful when I describe things as hard or as challenging, because I'm essentially telling myself that it is, as opposed to what happens if this were easy. And so I think one thing right away would be helping people go to think in that direction. Like, what happens if investing out of state were easy? Or how can I reduce the complexity of this? Or how can I reduce complexity by just making the one key higher? And that sort of thought process is what led me to the Tims of the world, where he was essentially fulfilling my purpose and I was fulfilling his purpose. So I'm not sure if you've read the book, Who Not How, but it is a tremendous read where essentially, instead of when you come to a problem, like I want to achieve this result, instead of asking, how do I achieve that result? You ask, who do I need in my orbit, in my life, so that I can achieve this result? And the beautiful thing is it's not just something where you're delegating and it's like, okay, I'm here and they're here. It's like what they want for life might be completely fulfilled by you providing that opportunity. And so essentially you're the it person for each other. And Tim and I, and then I have another business partner, John, and a couple other business partners on these different businesses where we fulfill each other. Like, I don't want to make it sound too like spiritual or relationship oriented, but
you complete me, Tim.
We complete me. Yep. And so that's what I would say. And then we can go into all kinds of tactical strategies, but I always like to start with the mindset, because so many people, particularly as you mentioned, out of state investing, I think they create a level of mental complexity and resistance that's not necessary.
Well, let me rephrase that then.
Sure.
What errors are people making in an out of state business that we can talk about that we can fix, so that they're not making those errors again, like a technical error?
Yeah, I think number one is not relying enough on the experts. And this is just from observation. I mean, every case is different. Some people over rely on experts and so on and so forth. But generally speaking, to me, it seems like most out of state investors struggle because there's a fixation on them doing things. Mm-hmm. And so the reason you want to go out of state is because you want to build a business that you don't have to do those things, that you're truly aligning yourself with people that you can trust. And so I would say, number one, make sure you have the resources, financially or otherwise, to have the runway to not jam yourself up mentally. If you are a control person where you need to have control of things, then maybe you should save up even more money to where you're not going to be tremoring with things while people get these things. Some of these things take time. So I think the second thing is just always reminding yourself that, there are people out there in every area of life that in that specific area can do that a whole lot better than you can. And so I would say I would be obsessed if I were wanting to invest out of state with finding quality people and setting yourself up financially, mentally, emotionally to go on that journey. Like, hey, I know it's not going to be perfect. I know it's going to be messy. I'm going to give myself enough runway and I'm going to pursue this until I find the right people.
That's a good answer. Tim, what are people doing wrong?
What are people doing wrong? I'm sorry, I cut out for a little bit, so I feel like I'm kind of jumping in.
A tactical error that people are making in real estate investing that you see constantly over and over and over. And if they just follow this one piece of advice, they could be moving in the right direction.
Okay. Well, I see a lot of people they're trying to go right from zero, right to fixing and flipping, right? They think that they could go from absolutely no real estate knowledge to somehow being able to acquire a property below market value, fix it up and sell it for more. So I think just having that mindset with no experience whatsoever, just jumping right into flipping houses, I think is something that you need to refine a little bit. I don't think fixing and flipping is a strategy that you jump right into. I think it would make much more sense wholesaling first, because then you get good at identifying ARVs and repair projections, things of that nature, before you jump into actually doing it. So I think I've seen that a lot of people make that mistake, because if you've never projected repairs before, and if you miss your repairs by 20 grand, you just took 20 grand out of your potential profit. And if you didn't get your ARV right too, like all of a sudden you're at a loss and you thought you were going to make $40,000 or something like that. So it is very, very easy to fail on a flip if you don't know what you're doing. So I think that's a mistake that I see being done a lot of time. A lot of people think fixing and flipping is something you could do casually on the side, which I suppose you can, but if you don't have a base skill set that is going to support that, like if you weren't a carpenter or something like that, that can make it a lot easier, it's just going to be a challenge. Most people, I feel like a lot of people do that and they lose and then they quit.
I think, going along, that's a great answer. One of the things I think early people, one of the mistakes they make is not developing relationships, not really honing a relationship, really building it before they ask you to do business with them. I mean, I don't know how many networking groups you guys have gone to, real estate related networking groups. A lot of times it's just guys handing out business cards. Here's what I do. Here's what I do. And it gets, I mean, if you've gone to them as many times as I have, it gets very old. You can tell they're new. You can tell they're probably not as the type of person you're going to really be able to do business with. Developing relationships, I think, is the biggest thing that new people do. They follow a program or some sort of coaching program, and they'll take the words that were taught to them word for word and go and try to put them into practice. But they're not developing those actual relationships with the human being first before they start talking business. Totally. I want to roll with that into your podcast. You guys are developing relationships with people every single day on this podcast. So what brought you to want to make a podcast together?
Great question. And I kind of want to, if I can, I want to spend a little bit of time on something you said and then kind of go into that. So one piece of advice that I think would just be incredible for your audience, if they're that type of person that's going to conferences, they're new, they don't know what to do. I think we've lost the art in our culture of apprenticeship. And I think there's an overfixation on, I got to make $1 right now, instead of building me to become the person that can make $1 million, $10 million, $100 million later. So if I were brand new, what I would do is I would go find the best person in my area or wherever I could that I was willing to live. And I would work for them for free for anywhere from 6 months to maybe 5 years, depending on how much there was to learn, how much they could teach me, the value, et cetera. And I would go crazy, assuming that person was willing to be abundant in their mindset enough to really show me everything. Like, hey, I'll give you all of me. You could show me the systems. We understand it's not going to probably be forever, but if free labor is worth it to you to give up the systems, et cetera. And then I think that takes a lot of the risk off the person doing it, and it can accelerate their growth path by years, decades. Maybe they can they'll hit a level they never thought possible. So that's one piece of advice. So then the question of why the podcast. Sometimes in life, like, you find somebody that you just love being around. Like, and for me, that's Tim. Like, we have like similar, like, we're different in certain ways, but we have very similar passions. We have very similar energies. You could probably tell we both talk really fast. I don't know why that's so valuable to me, because, I probably should talk slower.
Getting to the point.
Exactly. It's like, well, we can cover a lot more in a similar amount of time. Right.
Yeah.
But there's just similar things that drive us, like the concept of freedom, for example, which is why we named the podcast Freedom Chasers, is we want to help people achieve financial freedom. And so there seems to be a centered mission. The other thing that I noticed about Tim early on is that Tim is like a responsibility ownership type mindset. Like, so there was a deal, we were possibly going to buy this property in Wisconsin, and he wrote the offer for me. And then we ended up backing out because we found out some stuff about the property we didn't know. And then the seller wanted to sue us. And so most agents would just be like, hey, peace out. Maybe here's my E&O insurance, best of luck. No, Tim was like, dude, if this goes somewhere, I'm paying for it. I wrote your offer, even though Tim didn't do anything wrong. And like, that to me is like the ultimate mindset. And so for me, addition to our wonderful relationship, friendship, all that sort of thing, it was like, I just immediately like, how can I be in this? How can we be doing stuff together? And so essentially we ended up figuring out that, hey, we both have a passion for people. We want to go the content route. And so it just ended up happening.
Yeah. So, you guys, you build a podcast. What is what's the goal? What's the focus of your podcast?
Yeah. Tim, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, so our goal is to inspire people to live lives of purpose and freedom. So in order to do so, we have conversations with real estate investors, and we focus a lot on the struggles and the challenges of their journey, because anybody getting into this that is totally green, they're going to think it's easy. Whenever you start something new, there's that 5 stages, whatever. You got that huge dopamine spike and you're like, yeah, this is going to be amazing. But you're going to get punched in the face. You're going to make a lot of failures. There's a number of people that we interviewed that are doing extremely well right now. And I could tell you about, on average, people take 6 to 18 months to get their first deal. So we want people to be aware of that when they get into this, but we also want people to be aware that there is power in consistency. There's power in practice. There's power in failure and learning from your failures. So that's where we spend a lot of the time with the podcast. We also love to get into actual strategies that are working now. So we fill the back half of the show, with a lot of that stuff when we get really strategic based on whatever that person's working on, because there's 1,000 different ways to make money in real estate. So we like to talk about just about any one of them. So, that's a brief synopsis.
Okay. So you guys have it's mainly a real estate based podcast. A lot of trial and error type people that have kind of made it to this point where they're doing really well.
Exactly. And what Tim, I think, did a great job of explaining, and I'll just kind of add to it, is essentially like it's really important to us that we capture the emotions and the stories of people. Because it's like, you probably know what it was like getting into the land, getting into real estate in general. Like, the risk is big. And so you feel those emotions. The deals never go as planned generally. They're always falling apart. There's stuff that you're finding, like the roof's wide open. Yeah. And so we want to share those stories so that people can feel comfortable that I'm not alone in this. Like, I'm not alone. My story might seem crazy, and it is, compared to what normal people in real life deal with. But in the real estate world, the abnormal is normal. And so as a result, we want people to be able to feel connected emotionally so that they could be ready mentally to take that step. Like, we interviewed a guy, our first podcast episode that went live was a guy that had a deal so crazy that he had to disband an HOA to get his flip sold. And he did. And so I'm like, props to this guy. Like, he had a guy abducted, seller abducted at closing by like what he found out was a member of the Russian mafia. I mean, just like crazy stuff. So, I mean, not every real estate deal is that crazy, but since we engage in story, like FBI stories, it's like, we hope to normalize how crazy real estate is so that people can settle down in their mind and get to work and accomplish their dreams.
Yeah. Freedom Chasers podcast. What days are you guys airing?
Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Yeah. Go ahead.
Could I piggyback off Matt's answer real quick? So, basically, we acclimate to the reality that we are most commonly in, right? So, the empowering thing is that you could choose what that reality is. So, if your normal reality is solving problems all the time, over a long enough time frame, that just becomes normal to you. And we want people to understand that, like, these problems are going to come, but eventually you're just going to see yourself as the problem solver, right? You're just like, this is my job. My job is to solve problems. Like, let's do this. I have a problem. Let's find the solution. Let's move on to the next problem, right? Because there's going to be another one. And it's a matter of being able to power through those things, because it's extremely important to have that mentality.
Yeah, I think a podcast really helps a lot of people, especially new people that are, confused and nervous and not sure how to move forward. Do you guys coach anybody? Do you guys do coaching or anything like that?
Yeah. It's not a huge part of our day, just because of, the businesses that we run and our objectives with the podcast. But for a few key individuals, we do. What we're going to be launching is essentially more of a group element to where we can help a lot of people through the podcast. But currently, we'll take on a handful of coaching clients. So. Okay,
great. Guys, how can people get hold of you?
Yeah, we're happy if you are willing, we'll share the links to the podcast and our contact information so people can reach out to us on social. And
yeah, you guys on Instagram, Facebook, all those places though?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, very new. So this might be interesting for your listeners. Like, because I wanted to build the lifestyle business, one of the things prior to being a podcaster, actually, like, I'm wildly, so my personality type is actually extroverted, antisocial. And so, like, I have these tendencies, I don't know if other people are like this out there, but I have these tendencies like to not want to be known. So like, I love talking to people. I get my energy
in the wrong direction for that.
Yeah, exactly. So I have been like Facebook only. I don't post for years. And then I recognize, okay, I have two choices. Choice number one is I live this enjoyable life that we've created through hard work and skill building, and I don't make an impact on people, or I get over myself and throw myself out there. And so we did the podcast because we're like, once we do that, it's like jumping off a cliff and there's no going back. So that's where we're at. So you'll see all of our socials are like brand new stuff. So we hope to provide a tremendous amount of value, but just for those that are listening, like this is like an act of love, hopefully from me to the world, because it's like the inside of me screaming, like, just go chill, read a book, and retire.
Yeah, you're doing it for them though, too. You have to, once you get past that wall, that you're not just doing it for you. You're not posting videos of yourself talking on a camera just so that for your own ego. It's,
totally.
You learn so many cool things, so many interesting things that people are going to benefit from. But if you sit in your room all day and read a book, no one will ever know that. So
exactly.
If you make a podcast, you grab Tim, you're like, dude, I know you got a ton of stories. I got a ton of stories. We know other people that have a ton of interesting stories that are going to help other people. Let's put it on. Let's put it out there. Let's help other people versus, it's not just us, Tim pulling up in his Lambo, taking pictures of himself in his suit. It's not that. It's,
right.
That would be different if that were the case, but it's, you're actually out there trying to help people.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah. And when that's the motivation, it's tough. Like, I mean, when we post with the hope of inspiring, it's for most people, if they were to start, it's awkward as frick,
Yes.
It's just like, gosh, like, how are they going to perceive this? So we're getting over
especially
that.
At first, especially when you first start doing it, you're like, do your best, really work hard.
Yeah.
But after a while, it's just like anything else though, too. Once you start doing it over and over and over and over, your genuine meaning and feeling comes across a lot more easily, right? Like it's just through experience. You're practicing and getting better, and you have this genuine feeling inside you. You want to get out and tell people, but it initially it comes across as, oh, hey, you should really do this, and it just sounds really bad. But as you get better and better and better, that genuine mission gets out there, and it's easier to understand. So, I commend both you guys on getting out there and doing all that too. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, here it is. You guys ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
I told you about the big question we ask at the end of every podcast.
Yeah.
This is big. This is intense. We're going to start with Tim this time. We're going to reverse things. Tim, if you could buy land, well, first of all, we're LandLife. I buy and sell vacant dirt, trees and dirt. That's about it. Tim, if you could buy land anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Thank you for that fantastic question. So I'm going to lean to some of our guests, actually we did a few people that did land acquisitions, and it seems to me that the Florida market is absolutely booming for land. So, I know a couple of people doing large scale construction down there based off of land acquisition. Like somebody's building 100 properties right now that we just interviewed recently, and that's in the Cape Coral area. It seems like Florida is a raging hotspot for land right now because of all the influx of people coming in there, many of them coming from Chicago, of course. To answer your question, I would be looking very, very hard at Florida. And I would be looking at another couple of states also. I would think Arizona probably has a ton of opportunity, but that's probably the most competitive market in the world. So that's something to be aware of. And I would also be looking at Texas probably too, because I think long-term those states are going to continue to grow.
Warm states. Why? You live in Chicago. And you're looking at all warm states. I'm just so surprised. Like, you want to get out of the cold?
Well, that's just based on data. So your average American,
the data of waking up every day being freezing cold.
well, see, that's what I was going to say. Your average American does not want to go through the winters of Chicago. My nearest relative that immigrated here was from Norway. So I like to say I got that Norwegian blood. Like the cold does not bother me. I do not even wear a jacket until it's like below 10. I wear a hoodie and a hat. Like anything above 10 degrees, I'm fairly whatever, I'm good. Once it gets to 10, I'll throw a coat on. That's it. So, I actually prefer, temperate temperature is my ideal, 60 to 70. But like anything over 20 is fine with me. I actually don't love anything over 80. Like the heat gets to me pretty quick, but I live in Chicago. It's very humid here. So the dry heat's different.
Dude, I live in Denver. I mean, it gets warm here, but it's dry the whole time too. So we don't really have, and it's always sunny here. It's almost never cloudy and rainy and nasty. We got it pretty good. All right, Matt.
All right, cool. Well, Tim, I appreciate that answer. Tim is always coming through with some home runs on like where the latest trends are. I'm going to go a completely different direction just to give your audience a different flavor.
Chicago.
Right, exactly. I normally think like Tim. Okay, so what I would do as I go as a visionary, I'd like to see things from different perspectives. So one thing I would do is I'd pick a place like Alaska or on an island or something like that, something where we could create a business that creates an experience. So obviously with our podcast, we want to create a way where people can experience freedom. And so one of the things that I kind of like is obviously combining nature with business. So I would want to create a big, buy a piece of land that you have gorgeous views of water, ocean, trees. If you can get all in once, like maybe in Alaska, then build out like a site where people could come for like a transformational event and, grow their business. So that's a piece of land that I would buy. Somewhere in that.
Alaska is beautiful, man. It's like, it's surprising how nice it really is up there.
Oh, I've had some amazing experiences in Alaska, and anybody that has never been and maybe is like scared to go or whatever, go on a cruise. The Alaskan cruises are the best.
That's awesome. Alaskan cruises. So we're either going to Florida or we're going to Alaska, the two farthest possible places you can get
totally
in the country. You guys have home bases out there. You can still do all your real estate business wherever you want. And the podcast can still work.
That's it.
Of course.
Yep.
It's going to be a little darker half the year where Matt's at. But
that's right. So get some depression pills.
That's right. Anything else, guys, before we take off?
I think that's it, brother. Thanks for having us on.
Awesome, guys.
Yeah,
Guys,
so
I
much.
really appreciate it. And guys, till next time on LandLife.